All right, this is a reply to the modern mystic, and uh, I just find it ridiculous. Also, talking to the modern mystic is one of those. Do I talk directly? Because I think the only times he replied to me in the past, I know a couple times, he replied to me not watching my video, but just watching Gary doing his Garying of my video, which I didn't think was very bright. And I think you're evasive, mystic. And it's silly the things you do. I mean, the cheapest rhetorical things, um, like you're looking for in Mindium. Like there has to be an element with this property of being able to suffer for it to be a real thing. But what about fire? Which of those elements alone has the property of fire? None of them, right? Because to burn is to oxidize rapidly in atmosphere. Requires oxygen. But oxygen doesn't burn, the other thing burns. So there is no fire till you find element 205. This is ridiculous. Okay, and it's evasive. It's like you spend energy making your life peaceful and tranquil, and you're going to tell us that's not for any reason. You spend energy to make your life a certain way. Spending energy, that's not real enough for you. It doesn't matter how things turn out, but you'll spend energy to make them turn out one way rather than another. And then go, but it doesn't really matter because my motivations don't matter. But they still exist, though. Right? And they matter in the sense that they led you to one situation rather than another. You're going to ask about life and my misery. Life leads nowhere. What do you mean? It leads to where you live. Life leads to Hawaii. Life leads to wherever you are. Okay, so I'm going to go interleave with the thing. I don't know if the whole video, or I already cut out a preface clip, but I might do the whole parts that are on the topic, but we'll see. This is my preface comment. Having watched the video once, and now we're going to watch it again and insert comments.
Right, but the brain and I, the biggest take I think from it is that people are interchanging, confusing, mixing and matching the brain and I, willy-nilly.
So with all due respect, I think here's where the evasion begins. You don't believe in the word I. You think it's an illusion, it refers to nothing, so how are you going to tell people what to use it to refer to? The word apple, it's an illusion because it's not really an apple, it's just an arrangement of carbon and hydrogen and so on. This apple is not an apple. We use the word apple to refer to that bundle, so it doesn't have to have a thingness. See, there's people in the world, skeptics and relativists, that agree it's a system, not a thing. But we also agree, but I can name the system. I'm talking about that system over there, the one that makes up that apple. So that's how it is with us. You think the word I doesn't exist, so part of the time you want to talk about it doesn't exist, but first you want to define the word for us and have us use it, and then go it doesn't exist, and then everything you defined it as is supposed to evaporate. Right? The phenomena of having the illusion of feeling pain exists. That phenomena is real, and that's all that pain is. Doesn't mean so pain is nothing. It means no, you using your own frame of reference, the real one, it exists. Using some God frame of reference where individual things don't matter, they're insignificant, then it doesn't exist. But that frame of reference is what doesn't exist. You're just making it up to feel good about not being able to do anything in the world, you say, except for in your own little part of it, specifically where life leads, and then you want to say life led nowhere when it can't not lead somewhere, right? If you're still alive, you're somewhere, and that's where it led to, right? Isn't that the basic logic? That because you're trying to act like everybody else is just missing a basic logic, and isn't that a pretty basic logic? I mean, you were there in the UK somewhere, and that's where your life led. So one life led one place, See about me, I'm in Hawaii. Yeah, my life led one place per life gets led to.
Or normally it's done at convenience. If, when talking about the brain, it gets a bit tricky sounding, then there's normally recourse to going I, or me, or we, or she, or something. Anyway, I think the best reply I gave in the end was to my misery me. And it basically goes along this line, that the brain is a tricky thing. Okay, the brain is a tricky thing. Because, I mean, Jay just insists again that the brain exists, consciousness exists, suffering exists, and it's better that suffering doesn't exist. But basically go with the first lot. But what my reply, I don't know if it was, or certainly would be, is that the brain comes up with all sorts of garbage.
I mean, basically, you're the kind of person that is saying, I think, life is a dream, therefore it's not real, therefore it doesn't exist. Whereas the reality is like life is a dream. Oh, isn't that interesting? That's what it is. Isn't that would be the proper response? Besides, it's obviously very little like a dream. That's a metaphor from sleepy time, and no, life being awake is not just like being asleep. See, this is the kind of thing why I think that you spend a lot of time in rhetoric. You're going to talk about things the brain does. The brain. You're going to talk about the brain like it's a thing. Up until the point where the fact that it comes up with pain means pain doesn't exist. Right? So if I'm out in an orchard and I see apples and pears, my brain came up with nothing. I would say it comes up with apples and pears. When you say, well, that's nothing, then I would say that's not any definition of nothing that I'm familiar with. And you'd say, well, ultimately, in reality, they amount to nothing. They don't matter. So even though there's something there, they don't matter ultimately in reality. I don't care about the ultimate reality. I care about apples versus pears versus poison fruit. So what's the obsession with this ultimate reality in which nothing exists? How about the real reality where apples and pears and pain and everything exists?
Comes up with good stuff, maybe, but it comes up with an awful lot of garbage as well. Most people listening here, I think, would put themselves in the category, if they're, unless they're like me, who is so ego-driven that doesn't like to be put in any category at all. I'm a pure individual. We would probably agree that if we had to be putting in a category, we'd be atheists of some sort. We don't believe in.
Okay, and but I want to clarify a little. I know you don't believe that life is a dream. The dream's an illusion, and because life is a material, it adds up to the same thing. You're saying X, Y, and Z, therefore nothing exists, and that's not even an option. It has to be X, Y, Z, thus that's the nature of existence. The nature of existence is everything is a system, and we identify stable systems as things with our brain.
God, like so many million people do. But that is the thing, that's the problem, that there are billions of brains out there that do believe in God. Now, they just don't believe in God. It's the fact that a brain, or brains, or all those billions of brains have reinvented in their own way for their own ends God. They pray, they talk to God.
See, I think you share in an idea just like this, Mr. Modern Mystic. I think you believe that things need to be judged by some ultimate authority. And so your atheism is like there is no ultimate authority, therefore everything is judged as nothing. The authority is zero, everything is multiplied by zero. No, it means the factor is not zero, you're not multiplying by zero. There is, that frame of reference doesn't exist. But your frame of reference still exists, right? And you want to judge everything obsessively by some ultimate authority that isn't present. And you think like proving that it's not present will mean everything adds up to zero. It means you're looking for the wrong answer. It means your answer added up to zero, and you still have yet to explain reality.
They imagine that God is talking to them, and God will welcome them to heaven, and there are angels, and there's heaven and hell, and a soul, and all sorts of fine things. That is what brains do. They come up with all sorts of garbage. As I say, as well as probably good stuff. But, this is all predicated on the understanding that the good stuff, or basically the bad stuff as well, that brains come up with, is for one function, and that is to get the connected entity to do the right thing, the appropriate thing, the useful thing, to get through in a Darwinian evolutionary way. And all our ancestors have done the same thing. That's kind of why we do it.
So you use these words a lot, our ancestors and why we, how, you resort to those words, right? So look, if there's no real I in the spirit, thing, sense, which I agree with, then we're going to use the word I for what it's been labeling this whole time, which is this neurological system, right? The theory that there's a little substance that's made of soul, okay, that's wrong. But we could still say that phenomena, it's like Plato thought an apple had an essence. It was an apple in and of itself. That's an essential characteristic. It was an imperfect copy of an ideal apple. He was wrong. Doesn't mean we can't use the word apple anymore to refer to the physical chemical phenomena, which is an apple, or I to refer to the physical phenomena, which is the I, which is some operation of the brain, evidently.
But bear in mind that billions of brains think that they are on intimate talking terms with God.
Yeah, and some people are on intimate terms with the ability to know the ultimate criteria for reality, for judging that things aren't how they seem to be because there's some ultimate reality that's more real than how they seem. So it's a lot like believing you're in touch with God, isn't it?
So when it comes to pain, it's not so surprising, or pain and suffering, that, finger, hurt. Finger isn't hurting. Can we at least agree that? Yeah?
We could agree on that if you stick to one thing or the other. See, the problem is you're going to say it doesn't hurt, and then you're going to say the brain doesn't hurt either because it's not damaged. The hand doesn't hurt because it's damaged but doesn't actually feel the pain itself. And the brain doesn't feel pain because it feels the pain but it isn't damaged. But you've established right off that by it not being the hand that the damage doesn't matter. It's not a part of pain. So it's not required that you feel damage due to pain. It's just not related to the damage. And you ignore the connections of these. It's not just magically it goes to the brain. There are the ending of nerve wires, pain wires. Those pain signals start in the hand. And it's a one network between the hand and the nerves in the hand and the brain. And the whole network creates this phenomena of sensing pain. You're going to want to switch. You're going to say, oh, damage. Pain should be damage. No, pain has nothing to do with damage. You could say that. That's why we have terms like phantom pain. It's pain, but it's not real because there's no damage. But most of us would say, no, this means the pain is mental. You feel it in the brain. It's designed to be reacting to damage, but it can be falsely triggered. Seems pretty sensible to me. And then there is pain in that whole system, with the sometimes damage is involved, and that's sort of the purpose. And you want to obfuscate that by going, the pain is not on the hand. Certainly we could say that. And then let's get to the brain. And there's no damage up there. Oh, well, guess what? Damage already is just only indirectly related to pain. We have an arbitrary system for creating pain. It's meant to be plugged into things that are sensing damage, but it doesn't have to be. So we know the answer to that story, and we know there's pain in this network of nerves. And that most of when we're concerned about pain, we're talking about that subjective feeling of pain, and that's mental. We know that. You just want to try to confuse the issue.
Finger isn't hurting. Pain does not exist in any way, shape, or form. We've got a name for it.
Okay, great. At this point, there's no pain in the hand. What there is in the hand is damage. Is that unimportant? Is that not really happening? The pain's supposed to tell us about damage, and often it does. That's unimportant. That's not really happening. The whole phenomena isn't happening because, see, you've discovered there's no phenomena that's really a thing. Like pain. In our mind, we think of pain as that feeling and that we're getting hurt. right? If we feel pain and we notice, oh, I wasn't really hurt, we kind of, oh, get over it. It's not real, blah, blah, blah. And you're noticing, hey, that's a distributed phenomena. There's damage in the hand and hurt in the brain, and oh my gosh, it's all distributed. Well, guess what? What's absurd here is your absurd faith in the concept of the logical object, the thing. The thing. You've discovered, like so many of us, that things don't really exist. They're all processes and systems. The problem is your concept of thing. Why you still have faith in it when it applies to nothing. It's trivially non-applicable to everything. So why have faith in it? You have faith in it still and go, oh, the world must be wrong. Plato came up with this great idea for a thing. Nothing, it applies to nothing. Therefore, there's nothing. I'm going with Plato. No, that's not how the fucking world works is what that means. When your idea of thing applies to nothing. And you try to play all these games where what I'll do is I'll decompose the thing into various parts and I'll show that our idea of an essential thing in itself doesn't really have a set to be in because it's really a system and part of our thought is over here and part of our thought is over here. Well, congratulations, everything is a system. Doesn't mean the system doesn't exist. It means it's not a thing. It means your concept of a thing was insufficient for studying the world. Your brain figured out things are bullshit. There is no such thing as a thing except for our conception of one, and what we have in the real world is processes and systems that are not localized with the little point source of I'm the thinker. You've discovered that's impossible. And that's the only possibility, so there is none. No, that's not the only possibility. There's other possibilities. Hold on. Systems that are subsystems and have subsystems. That's the way things really seem to be.
We can even say we have got a feeling for it, like envy and love and jealousy. There's a feeling that we name pain and suffering. But there is no pain going on here. No pain. Even if the finger's being mashed with a hammer, there's still no pain in the finger. The pain, if it exists anywhere, exists in the brainium. But it doesn't, of course, exist up here either. There is no pain that we'd like to call pain, or suffering,
That's obviously not true. I mean, a lot of people do want to call these experiences pain. And if not that, it could have another name. It's identifiable, this phenomena that we're discussing. And now here's the part where you go into, because there's no damage. Well, obviously the pain that we're talking about the feeling then, not the damage. Damage, we have a material language. We could talk about damage. You might not even notice damage. No pain, but it's still damage. So you could deal with that on its own, right? We're talking about the feeling. The feeling is in the brain. And the people that are trying to figure out, like to you, it doesn't matter. Why figure out general anesthesia, right? Yeah, well, it makes a little bit of difference to people. So pain is in the brain. That's why they found out, you can't just cut off pain through the extremities. It's a mental phenomena. But the brain is physiological, so it's a physiological phenomena. And therefore, it's in a network with senses that actually do, statistically, often get triggered successfully in the appropriate circumstance, namely that there really is damage.
Happening in the brain. If there's any real evidence for that needed, there's no damage being done in the brain. It's an idea of the brain. It's an idea of the brain like angels.
So it's an idea in the brain you seem to have defined. And it's like angels in that it's an idea in the brain. Of course, there's some differences because of the material impact of these feelings. So I guess we agree. They're both real. They're just really feelings. And feelings seem to impact people, seem to exist, since to impact implies to exist. And you're just obsessively, compulsively stuck on this objectivist idea of, but there is no single thing. There aren't spirits, so nothing exists. Well, maybe the problem is the theory that it has to be just one thing, that a phenomena has to be one thing having a phenomena. No, it's a system of things that making the phenomena. Is that another option? See, I think you're playing with words. To say it's just like believing in angels is to say red is just like blue. They're both colors arbitrarily painted on to wavelengths of light you have received, which are in an optical range based on your evolutionary need to or ability to exploit those to your advantage. But red and blue are still different. In the real world, they're different wavelengths that are triggering what in our brain are slightly different mental phenomena. So they're actually still different. They have this sameness in that they're both mental. Ooh, you've discovered everything's mental. Yeah. That doesn't actually make it the same. Square, circle, triangle, all mental. That does not make them the same except for in that one respect.
And God and praying and talking to God are ideas of the brain. In their own way, useful Darwinian evolutionary ideas, that's all they are. Pain, suffering, envy, love, all that sort of stuff. Most all things are ideas in the brain.
Okay, so we agree on that. Can you can you not see the problem with then saying and therefore they don't exist? You just described what they are, what they exist as. And then you're going to say and that's not good enough for me, so they don't exist. Think about that. It's a lot like saying, I had a son, but he's not what I wanted to have. It's not how I think of a son. He's not a proper son. Therefore, I have no son. It's the same kind of thinking. It's just not good enough for you. It exists, but it's just not good enough for you.
So, brains out there will go things like, yes, but I'm trapped in the middle of all this Darwinian evolution. No, the I, the idea of the being an I that is doing the suffering, is just another idea of a brain. The pain is an idea, the suffering's an idea, the love's an idea, the I's an idea, God's an idea, the soul's an idea, and angels are an idea. Yeah? It's really not that difficult. Brains are machines that make up all sorts of tricky shit.
Yeah, Mr. Modern Mystic, that's not the tricky part. The tricky part is where you say, and therefore it doesn't exist and is all exactly the same. Red is like blue because they neither one exists, so there's no distinctions even. Really. Except for the ones I use all the time when I'm talking about things. That's the tricky part, where you're trying to say that process doesn't exist just because there's no thingness to it. You'd think you'd go, oh, it's something besides thingness. Thing in itself won't explain this. Oh, what will? And you're like, oh, really? Because that's the only one I was interested in. That won't explain it? Oh, okay. There isn't even any difference. Your eyes are lying to you because, my one, solution that I would accept has been proved impossible. And so, there's nothing. That's the tricky part,
And
Mystic.
basically, most all of it is made up tricky shit to get the connected parts through in an evolutionary Darwinian sort of way to grow up to be big and reproduce and then do the inevitable dying thing. But at base, when you talk about I feel this, know that there is no I to do the feeling. It's the brain that's doing the feeling, and the brain is a lying little shit that makes up all sorts of stuff so it can get through into the future.
Seriously, Nick, what do you not get about that as an explanation? Oh, the brain, there is no I. Okay, great. So the word I doesn't mean what we thought. So when we said I all the time, what were we talking about? Oh, our neurological system? How about then, okay, now let's just understand I to mean that. That's possible. We don't have to bring along some idea of a soul in order to use the word I. We could say, oh, it's a name for this subsystem in the sense of The universe is a system. This is a subsystem. It's a system within the system of all of the greater systems, lesser systems. So I'm allowed to use the word. And then it's like, well, it makes up things like hunger and lust. Lust isn't real. No, lust is real, and you just described how it really came about. It came about through a evolutionary process that wants to be able to say, turn up the lust. Because it's harder to go, you need to reproduce for this reason, and you're actually, all these details of why you might analytically think, I will reproduce. Not as motivational. Evolution came up with a motivation, you'll feel lust. Now you figured it out and you want to go, and therefore it doesn't exist because I was hoping it was something God whispered in my ear, not evolution. Well, it was evolution. It does exist. You know why it exists. You don't get to say, well, it doesn't exist because I'm only going to say something that God whispered in my ear exists, and this is way too mundane. No, the mundane exists. That's the answer. Click.
Yeah. And that's not to put you down, or your brain down, or brain that's there down, or this brain down. That's just been the greatest survival mechanism that Mother Nature has come up with, to invent a brain that makes shit up. And there is no me, I, or anything that is collateral damage to that. There just is no I or me to have the collateral damage, because the I and the me is just another made-up thing that the brain machine has made up. That's it for today. Thanks, bye.
Well, Nick, what you're saying doesn't even make sense. Of course there is an I to have this, and within your system it's the illusory I that exists as an illusion, in the same sense that unicorns exist as fairy tale creatures, that exists as an illusion, that exists here to experience it. That is what it's doing, and it makes stuff up. Oh, you blow that way out of proportion. Yeah, it makes stuff up, but you know what? It has to, because it's a machine. It's a machine taking some events as information, a limited amount of a subset of events, a very sparse subset of events, and it wants to recreate a picture of what's going on out there, sort of beyond that subset, like there's radar and it pulls it in, wants to make that model. It has no choice but to make things up, like you're saying. And in contrast to the way you're putting it, because I'm a skeptic and I pointed that out plenty of times in my life to people that are too certain, but you were so extreme to the nihilism where you said, I've analyzed it, look, here's how all the patterns are, therefore patterns don't exist. No, that is the pattern. The brain makes stuff up. It has to, because it's a machine. The computer has to make up the web page. It's not the same web page. It's a copy reproduction system, right? Considering that has to be the case, the brain actually does amazingly well at telling you when you're in your strawberry patch touching strawberries, and it's pretty consistent. Yeah, every once in a while you dream about your strawberry patch and you're not really in it. Oh my God, we'll do some math. Figure out the statistics. How often when you pick up a pen, is it a pen in the sense that you can then write with it, that you can put it somewhere and get it later? Quite often, isn't it? Yeah, so really, considering it has to be this metaphorical reproduction, halo deck kind of thing, it does actually a pretty amazing job. You make it look good at how awesome its fidelity is. Cheers.